Welcome to the New Life Stories channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching.
Duncan broke the bad news to his wife with his head down. "Nicole, I've been laid off from my job. The crisis hasn't gone away from our company, and almost half of the employees have been laid off." Duncan's boss informed him that his services were not needed yet, and he couldn't be sent on vacation because no one knew how long the crisis would last or if it would even end. She asked in an agitated voice, "Is this true?" The husband replied, "I really have been laid off. This is not a joke. I don't know what to do. I'm going to look for a new job tomorrow, but it's a recession and it won't be easy for me to find a similar job that pays me decently." Nicole snorted and said nothing more. In the morning, she brought her husband a laptop with a bunch of open tabs with job ads. Duncan asked her, "I would have found a job myself. Why didn't you sleep?" The wife grumbled, "I know you. You'd sit in front of the TV and bum around until the evening. Go ahead and call." The man sluggishly began to blink his eyes. "At least let me have breakfast and coffee," he said. The wife replied, "He who doesn't work doesn't eat." Duncan had not expected this. He thought that his wife would try to pick him up, to make him believe that the loss of his job was temporary, and that he would quickly find something else. All he got from her was reproach. Nicole resigned herself. "Of course, I was joking." Apparently, she read the surprise in her husband's eyes, and not just surprise, there was real indignation. Why was she acting like this if she'd stayed home after the wedding and never worked? Duncan sat down at his laptop and started calling the classifieds. Almost everywhere, he was answered that the position was already taken, but they had forgotten to remove the ad. Only one place invited him for an interview. Duncan didn't have time to eat breakfast because he was told to come as soon as possible. Unfortunately, he was not hired after the interview, so a whole week went by like that. Nicole went from being a good wife to a real fury. She often snapped at her husband and told him how unhappy she was with him. Day after day, she criticized him like a cranky kitten for staying home. She even made him go to job interviews that were far removed from his field of work. Duncan couldn't stand the pressure from his wife and decided to take a job as a janitor in their yard. Of course, the job was not lucrative, but at least he had some income. He had to work in the mornings, and in the afternoons he had the opportunity to continue his job search. After all, working outdoors was good for his health. His wife was skeptical of his decision, but she didn't discourage him. She said that money was tight, because the money he was being paid before he was laid off could run out quickly, and then they would be out of money. Nicole grumbled every morning when Duncan got up at the alarm bell and was about to sweep the yard. "I didn't marry a janitor," she complained. He shrugged. "Sorry, I didn't quit my job." One day, Duncan ran into a neighbor. They had grown up together since childhood, and he knew Ruth well. She was much changed now, more feminine, but she had never been able to start a family and had recently moved into her parents' apartment. He didn't ask her why she had done it. Working as a janitor, he heard what people were talking about, and one of the news stories was that Ruth had left her fiancé or he had kicked her out. There were different versions. Once again in the morning, he met Ruth in the yard. Ruth asked, walking up to him, "Duncan, why did you decide to get a job as a janitor?" He shrugged. "Life has ordered it that way." "Yes, life is complicated, and now I'm making pies at home for a living. It's so good, I don't have to depend on anyone. I've built up my client base and set up a room. It's a small business." Ruth asked, walking up to him, "Duncan, why did you decide to get a job as a janitor?" He shrugged. "Life has ordered it that way. Life is hard, and now I make a living by baking pies at home. It's so good, I don't have to depend on anyone. I've gathered my customer base and set up a room of my own." Duncan was engrossed in his conversation with Ruth and didn't even notice how quickly the time passed. Her story made him think that he, too, could start his own business. Even if he didn't make good money, it wouldn't be a waste. In his youth, the man had a passion for wood carving. Ruth said, "Put an ad online and try to sell something. See if it works. It's hard to find work these days." A few days passed. Ruth came almost every morning, chatting with him like a neighbor, serving him pies and encouraging him not to waste his talents, because if he wanted to, he could make good money. Exclusive souvenirs could interest many people. There is a crisis now, but the rich always have money, and they have their own quirks. The main thing is to present the idea correctly, that's all. One day Ruth offered Duncan a part-time job. I get asked more and more often about courier delivery. You have a car, and you're home a lot. Would you be willing to deliver my orders to customers from time to time? I'll pay as much as you say. Of course, we won't get much money from one order, but there are 10 of them a day. You can earn a good amount of money, she suggested. The man immediately agreed, but for the time being, until he found a job. When he returned home, the man wanted to share with his wife the happy news that he had found a part-time job. But she met him with a cold stare. She became angry. Every day you talk to the crazy neighbor. Haven't you thought about looking for a job? You know I look at the ads and go to interviews every day, but I haven't found anything yet, he said. Then you're not looking hard enough and stop talking to her. Otherwise soon all the neighbors will start pointing their fingers at us and think we're just as crazy. You're embarrassing me in front of the neighbors, Nicole shouted. Duncan was very surprised. First of all, they were his neighbors because he had lived in this apartment since birth and Nicole had only moved here after they got married. Second, only Nicole thought Ruth was crazy, and everyone else was perfectly fine with the woman. Duncan made his way to his room, deciding he wasn't going to talk about the part-time job this day. He decided not to look for a job, but to look at the woodwork that the other woodcarvers were selling. He could try to start with one thing and then come up with something new and different to get people buying from him faster. His wife snorted. That's how he looks for work, and went to bed with a book in his hands. At night, lying next to his wife in bed, Duncan pondered why he had chosen Nicole. Why had he chosen to marry her? She hadn't been like this before. Or did she act differently because he was home less often and brought in a lot of money each month? He decided, however, that his wife had turned on him again for not looking for a job. He would say that she could get a job too. The next day was spent traveling. Courier delivery was in high demand, and the man made more money than he expected. Of course, it wouldn't even be enough for half a trip to the store because of his wife's requests, but it was still money. When he returned, Nicole was already asleep, so there was no tantrum. The wife had calmed down a bit during the week when Duncan had helped Ruth with the baked goods delivery because the man had given all the money to her. But when the neighbor had the day off and the man sat down to do the tree work, Nicole ran into his office again. Don't you have anything else to do? When was the last time you had a job interview? And why do you like that crazy woman that you work for her and treat her well? Duncan snapped and said, Please don't speak ill of people you don't know at all. Ruth is an ordinary woman and you and your royal manners. The wife became indignant. What? How dare you say that to me? You've been at home for almost a month. Duncan was indignant, unable to keep it together. I'm working even though I'm sitting at home, and you haven't earned a penny in our life together. He was tired of having his feet wiped on him. His wife should be supporting him, not rebuking him. Nicole ran over to the closet and hurriedly threw things into her bag. I'm leaving you. Do you understand me, poor janitor? Get out to your roommate if you like her so much. Nicole jumped out into the entryway, outraged at her husband's behavior, who dared to rebuke her for being at home. He's a man, so he should provide for his family and she should stay home, her mom always said. Nicole couldn't stand it and called the neighbor's apartment. Ruth opened the door and froze in amazement. Ruth asked in a concerned voice, Did something happen to you? Nicole angrily replied, Yes, it did. You decided to coddle and pity him, then take care of him. I'm giving him to you. I don't need that pathetic janitor. Ruth stood there, not understanding anything as Nicole hurried down the stairs. Several months passed. Nicole couldn't live with her mother because she kept saying her daughter needed to get a job. After all, the two of them won't have enough for her pension. Nicole remembered how calm and happy she had been living next to her husband, whom she had hastily divorced in the first month after leaving, and decided to go to him. She did her makeup and hair, got dressed, and hailed a cab. Nicole pulled up to the house she had lived in a few months ago, opened the intercom with her key, and went upstairs. Her husband had changed the lock on the apartment, which the woman didn't immediately realize. She pressed the doorbell when she saw his car in the driveway. After a few seconds, Duncan opened the door and looked at his ex-wife with a perplexed look. "Nicole, hi. Why did you come here?" "Hi. I wanted to see how you were doing. Do you have a job?" "I'm doing fine. I'm back at my old job. The crisis has passed. How about you?" Duncan was in no hurry to let Nicole into the apartment, and she didn't like it. She was already starting to look over his shoulder and wonder how she could get him to invite her in. "I missed you," came a woman's voice from the apartment. "Duncan, who's there?" When she saw Ruth, she turned pale with anger. What the hell was she doing here? Just then she remembered that she herself had given her husband to a neighbor in a fit of anger. Nicole quickly said, "You forgot about me, and she's just glad she got someone else's man." Duncan growled, "She is my wife, and I will not allow you to insult her. Go on your way. The free trough is closed to you forever." Duncan slammed the door in her face, and Nicole burst into tears, realizing she had missed her happiness, not the man, but the money he was giving her. Ruth looked at Duncan in surprise. She asked him, "Why a wife? I thought we were just. Why?" "No one has ever supported me as much as you have, and I've only recently realized that I've liked you for a long time. But if you have someone..." Ruth replied in the negative, causing Duncan to lower his head and scold himself for the fact that his happiness was so close and he hadn't noticed it right away. Ruth said, "I have you now," after which she hugged him. 6 months later, Duncan and Ruth were married. By this time, another driver was delivering Ruth's orders. Duncan was working at his old job, and in his spare time, he was doing wood carving, and this was beginning to bring him an income. They were now thinking of selling their apartments and buying a house with a large kitchen for Ruth and a workshop for Duncan, and a large garden for their son or daughter to run around in, for Ruth was by this time pregnant. Dear friends, if you liked this story, please share your thoughts in the comments and put like or dislike. And maybe you will want to subscribe to our channel. Thank you all. Until new stories.